If you're a builder, remodeler, trade partner, architect, designer looking to grow your business, expand your network, and learn from some of the best minds in the industry, then you need to be at the Contractor Coalition Summit. It will be held November 6th through 9th in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is not your typical conference. The Contractor Coalition Summit is built around real conversations, real relationships, and real strategies that you can take back and implement immediately. You'll connect with top-performing contractors from across the country, hear from industry leaders, and gain insights on leadership, operations, sales, marketing, culture, profitability, and AI. Whether you're looking to scale your business, improve your systems, or simply surround yourself with people who are pushing the industry forward, this event is for you. We will see you November 6th through 9th, Charlotte, North Carolina. Go to www.contractorcoalitionsummit.com and register and sign up.
Having people like and trust you is really what it's all about. Just don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they seem silly to you, they're not silly to somebody else.
Well, I'm super excited for the podcast today. Welcome, Denise.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, excited to have you on. So we have Denise Scott Weber and owner, principal designer of DSW Design. And Denise, we go back quite a ways. I mean, you have a lot of experience in this field, and actually this was very early on that you and I met working at the Chateau On Central.
I was just there the other day, by the way.
Were you
Brought
really?
back old memories. Yeah. I still work with her. I've worked with her quite extensively on commercial too, but she loves it there. She's happy.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And just for a little context, this is kind of the very early history of AFT for me, especially when we met Denise. There are these brownstones that were started in the recession. Well, they were started in like 2005 and 6. These 5-story brownstones out of brick near downtown Phoenix. So it's kind of unique for Phoenix to have this like urban living, like you'd see maybe in Boston or San Francisco with these brownstones. And the project went belly up, in 2008, 9, and sat vacant for a few years. And then in 2011, MSI West, an investment group out of Wisconsin, Dave Clark, who was a business partner of mine, and Kirsten Clark and Rudy Roth, they bought it and, did this. They rebuilt them all. And one of the clients we had that's in one of those signature units that's overlooking, the funny background, I don't know if you knew this, Denise, but the unit that our client lived in that you were just at was actually going to originally be like a restaurant with residents above it. So the first few floors were going to be a restaurant that was designed for like a dumbwaiter. And here you come in with this skeleton and design this incredible build.
Yeah, it was intimidating, I must say. That I guess I'd never designed a 5-story, 200 square foot condo. Luckily, I knew my client really well because I did all the commercial med spas, medical aesthetic centers. So it was a nice fit. It paired well. And that's when I met you and Adam and Susan. That was a great experience, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I'll give, I do have to share one story. So sorry to be a little long-winded here on you, Denise, which is kind of a podcast. But one thing that really impacted my career, and I positive you were standing there in this meeting. So we were having an infill meeting with the client, with you, with our team. And we were standing on the 4th floor, that should be looking downtown Phoenix. And these were built out of solid brick. I mean, these are hand-laid brick, 1x1 walls. And the client's like, I want a window there. And Adam would be okay with me sharing the story. And I remember Adam saying, you don't want to do that because it's going to cost X amount of dollars and it's going to take this amount of time to the schedule and, all these little things. And I just remember specifically the client looking at him and saying, don't tell me how to spend my money. Yeah. And so it was kind of eye-opening because I think sometimes in our business, it may be true that, this change may require a lot of time. It may require additional cost. But, our role as, ambassadors is, represent our clients. I'm sure for you too, Denise, is when, really our job is to provide the information. Like, here's option A, B, and C. Or, yes, we'd be happy to make this change. Just understand that it's probably going to be in this range for price and it may affect the schedule this month. And then let the clients decide. And it was really eye-opening for me to learn that, we have to be very careful about being super opinionated and really the client's drive. And that's why we're, custom designer like you, custom builders such as myself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And also on that same day, she wanted the 4th floor was the master suite.
Yeah.
And she wanted more room in her sitting room. And, for a woman to say, take away from my closet is a pretty big That's how much you wanted it. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, Linda, or, we're going to lose a foot. And she's like, that's okay. I need it. I'm like, and then Adam looks at me and goes, we have to move the steel construction wall on the 4th floor, which means almost everything is affected below us, So it was an expensive wall to move 22 inches, I think, at the end of the day. But yeah, it was fun.
It's funny to remember that. That was because what's unique about this project, to Denise's point, I mean, it's not only was it 4 stories with the basement, but the exterior walls were out of hand-laid brick. All the interior floors were solid concrete, like precast concrete slabs that were set via crane. And then we couldn't have any wood framing. So everything was cold steel framing, ton of structural steel. So yeah, the way it was designed structurally, if you were to move these bearing points, like it had to go all the way down, the 4 floors from all the top steps. So there were some challenges. What, as you look back at that, how do you feel that you were prepared? Because I know, this is like midway through your career when we're doing this. So what, that experience prior to that, how did that lead you to a point where you had the confidence, to be able to take on a 7,000 square foot condo that's incredibly technical?
Yeah. designed a lot of commercial prior, but not to that extent, all one level. We have spas are on one level, but that was definitely a challenge. But I also feel, and I've always felt this way, I'm going to back up. My mother told me the best advice ever for anyone is, and she had a British accent, so she's from the UK, so it sounded much more formal. But she said, never lose hope. There's always a way. There's nothing you can't do. And always have a backup plan. So,
always have a backup plan.
That was pretty great advice. So I always took that to heart. And so I never said no to any project, even though, being uncomfortable should never be a stop sign, right? We need to keep going. We need to grasp that. So to answer your question, as I was full force ahead, and I knew I could do it, but it was a challenge. I think what helped me is the fact that your building team was so easy to work with because you were so sensitive to everyone's needs, not just the clients. You were sensitive to my needs. How can we make this flow really smoothly? And your company was brilliant. And then I also knew my client, I met her. I was 9 months pregnant.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had just finished the Phoenix Home and Garden Idea House, and that was done. So I'm moving into her. It was Regency Medical Aesthetics on Tatum and Shea, but now it's something else. But here I am. It's whoever the builder was no longer there, and there was holes in the ceiling because they didn't have the vents or the HVAC lined up for this commercial building, exposed plumbing and everything. And I just plastered the walls, and now I have all this dripping going on everywhere. So I'm carrying all these buckets trying to save my plastered walls from this flood. So she knew and had confidence in me that I am the kind of designer that gets her hands dirty, picking up the shovel if you have to, moving a bucket to save your walls that you're so passionate about. But so she hired me with confidence, and that made me feel more confident as well, So,
I love that. And I think what's interesting, Denise, is that there's so much to business of being confident. I'm sure for you as a designer, being very confident in your systems, your operation, your design aesthetic, all these things are going to lead to successful projects because the clients are going to rely on you, right? You're going to build that relationship. But, you still, it's delicate in a way because you may be very confident in your abilities, but you still have to figure out how to integrate a client's vision and what they want. And, does your taste really match theirs? So I'm sure for this client bringing you in, yes, you may have saw your grit in a way. How did you bridge that where to make sure, hey, Denise is on the same page as far as what I want to design, these commercial spas to be?
So I'm a hand holder. I nurture my clients. I baby my clients. I interview them like no one's business. Even one of my clients who's in Silverleaf, she's like, "You're going to interview me?" I'm like, "Well, clearly you have to interview me." But once everything is set up and you want to hire me, I'm going to make sure that I know everything about you. I really spend a lot of time with Q&A for them. I even want to know what they don't like, and that's actually almost more important than what they like in the beginning, because you just want a process of eliminate immediately. I remember designing, it was an investment company's office structure, and I had no idea that he didn't like the Packers. I mean, I'm from Minnesota. I went to school in Wisconsin, so I can't say either way, but a green and yellow was just not something that was going to enter that building. And unfortunately, a lot of my artwork had green and yellow predominantly for whatever reason. It was a very contemporary place, and he just walked in. So had I asked, it's in a bachelor office. Okay, I should have asked about sporting teams and stuff like that. But the more questions, don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they seem silly to you. They're not silly to somebody else. So really getting to know your clients. Really, you're not going to know everything. You're going to learn as you go. But again, keep the questions going, because they appreciate it. If you care enough to ask that many questions. And then eventually, I mean, most of my clients, after a while, I'd been working with them for 20 years for 4 projects later, maybe I did their office, having people like and trust you is really what it's all about, showing up. I used to tell my son, he's in commercial real estate now, and I go, all you have to do is show up. And you'll learn. Not all you have to do, be a good, be a student of your industry, keep going. So yes, I hope I didn't prolong the answer to your question, but that is getting to know your person, getting to know your client. Yeah.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, you say showing up is a big part of it. There's a lot of truth to that. And I think for some of us, it's easy to maybe take the easy path, right? And what I mean by that is it takes work to build relationships and trust with a client. And as you mentioned, part of that's showing up. It's having time. It's having FaceTime with them. It's, being in person, really understanding. And I don't know what it is. I feel like in construction, maybe even business owners in general, we have a hard time asking questions. And whether it's we don't want to seem like we don't know what we're doing or talking about, or we don't have the answers, it could be vulnerable in a way. How has that confidence been built for you to not feel, that, hey, this is, part of the process, as opposed to, me being inadequate in my position?
I think it's experience. I remember coming from Minnesota, northwestern Minnesota, by War Road, where you were not too long ago.
Oh, War Road, yeah.
Yeah, Crookston's like 90 miles south of there. That was a window company, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, Marvin's,
yeah. And, Marvin's. Look what I have.
Oh, you actually have look at that ad placement right there.
Yeah. No, we hired them for a project, so they gave us all these trinkets and things.
That's amazing.
Coming from Minnesota, small town, you're a little sheltered. I mean, a lot of us didn't even leave. Some people have never left. It's a nice, sweet, I call it my elegant Mayberry, where I came from. Very, very intelligent people, all very successful, very wealthy farmers, the richest soil in the world. So you have a diversity of professional people, but coming from there, I was very shy. So when I moved here, I didn't know anyone. I moved here out of college. I didn't really get into design for about 4 or 5 years on my own, but it was really hard for me, Brad. It was, you wouldn't see me stop at a job site that's going vertical with no designer name on it and saying, hi, my name's Denise Scott Weber. Do you have a designer here? I do that now because I love doing that, shaking hands with people. But no, I didn't. So the confidence level was just experience, getting used to being face to face with people, giving speeches, getting out of your comfort zone. If you're not uncomfortable, I don't know that you're really ever going to be successful, to grow, right? You need to grow. So I don't know if that answered your question, but no. I think just experience and doing more and more of it. And you'll find it's so fluid later,
How's that experience played a role? There's such a contrast in residential and commercial design. Maybe speak to that. What is, from an interior design perspective, because I have, my perspective as a builder, what's that like for you working in a client residential space to their commercial space?
Well, the common denominator would be appealing to your client, but in a commercial space, they want to appeal to the public. So it is their personal representation. Say if you're an investor and you have all these people from out of state coming in, and they're affluent. The more money, the better for this person, right? So you're going to want to up it a little bit. It is commercial, but I would say an office space is a little more personalized, and that reflects on who their clients are, and they're going to know what to do there. They're going to tell me, hey, these are my clients, and so I'm appealing to a different spectrum now. If I'm in a retail setting, like med spa is somewhat of a, who's the target market? Who are you catering to? I need to know, because I need to do the psychology on that. Usually I've done 3 medical aesthetic facilities. One's still open. I think it's Adam and Eve Medical Aesthetics over on Lone Mountain and Scottsdale Road. So, we literally had to call in NASA for that one because we had oxygen chambers, So that was fun. That was a challenge to, talk about being intimidated, but that's a very commercial setting where people need to feel very comfortable. You want to be comfortable in your home. I always try to design a home that moves with you. You shouldn't have to move with your home, especially when you are maybe needing assistance later and ADA may need to kick in, So now we have to pre-design for that. And that ADA is, demanded. It's you have to be ADA in a commercial setting. So if you don't have, I would say commercial teaches you residential, and vice versa, because you get very compliant with ADA in commercial settings. You have to be. And then you need to know the restrictions, the standards, the guidelines, everything. And they're different per city. You have to, and that's true with, the residential here too. Phoenix is way different than Scottsdale and vice versa. So I would say they're very similar, but the difference is you're not appealing only to the client homeowner, if you will, you're appealing to the general public. And that's the big difference. So you have to change your mindset on that and be sensitive to it. And what is the store? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you made a comment I think is very interesting. I never thought of. One of the most important things for us as a builder, designer, as a business owner, is we're trying to understand what our ideal client is, right? If we can understand our ideal client, it helps us, be in better positions to market to them, to network with them, to be in positions where we can gain traction, right? To work for that customer that's probably going to be the best, person for you, Denise. Commercial is different because, you kind of have 2 angles here. You have to understand your client, that ideal client that you're working through, and you kind of their nuance and what the vision. But then at the same time, you're trying to do this diagnostic of who's coming in, who's using the facility, how they operate, who are they trying to attract, and then to design to that. In my opinion, not that residential is easy, but there are a lot of challenges. It's very emotional based. But some of these commercial spaces too, there's a lot of emotion involved in that design.
Absolutely. And depending what the commercial space is, and the business owner is very passionate about what they do. Delicate. It could go from a gluten-free bakery. I'm a celiac, so I totally slam that one. I mean? But that was a great experience. But also, the med spas, now we're in medical. So it's very sensitive because now you're working with people's lives with, oxygen chambers and having to bring in Russian astronauts from NASA to control the oxygen levels. And then, also just anything, you have to wear a lot of hats in this industry. You have to be able to switch from one horse to the other. Are you going to be a bunkin' Bronco, or are you going to be going to the glue shop? I know that's a terrible example, but it is, you can put yourself in slow motion, or you need to giddy up because this is a serious business. It can be, and to be taken seriously and passionately. You have to love what you do, and they feel that. Your clients feel that. If you're on table, you're on board with them and you seem excited, and hopefully you are, and the new challenges that arrive, some projects I can do in my sleep. I can design in my sleep, but that doesn't help you to grow, So when you're given, like the Phoenix Home and Garden, I guess I finished 18 years ago. It was a long time ago, but the owner, Bill Phelan, I don't know if you remember, him. He's passed away 10 years now, but he came to the Valley before he owned the magazine, was the publisher. He was his bachelor with his fiance living in Saddle Rock Ranch. And, he had owned all these radio stations before he had retired, moved to California. He comes here, his builder refers me. I go in, it is a spec home, vanilla, and I get to know him and then one day he calls me and he says, "Hey, Dee, guess what I bought today?" I'm like, "I don't know. What'd you buy today, Bill?" And he's like, "Phoenix Home and Garden Magazine." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, wow." I felt like Elaine from Seinfeld and said, "Get out." It was just such a great day. And then he saw how hard I work. Coming from the Midwest, I'm not saying we're the only hard workers in the world, but it's a survival state. You're hands-on. Right. If you're not prepared, you're going to freeze, honey. That's just the way it is. So in the workforce, you're taught at a very young age to just keep going and, to show up, do your job, follow through, make it happen. And so he saw that. He wasn't an easy person to get along with. A lot of people struggled. I never did, though. I don't know, somehow I gained his respect. And then he decided, he kept traveling all over the place. He'd come back and he'd have all this art. And I'm like, "Bill, you're running out of walls. You need to build a new home." And so he decided to build in Cinco Dados. His widow lives there still. And then he ran out of wall space. That house made the cover in 2004. He put it on so I was on the cover for that one. That was really nice. He didn't have to. He didn't have to hire me, Brad. He could have hired anyone he wanted to, at that point. So he just kept giving me the opportunity. I had to fight for him, though. I had to fight for it, tell him what my scope and what my vision was. And he went with the one he liked. So, and then he ran out of walls again. And I said, "Well, Bill, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to build a house in Prescott, a talking room. I'm going to have a cabin." Well, this was no cabin, right? But he's like, "It's going to be called the Idea House, Denise. And it's going to be nationally publicized. And you're going to be the last year of construction. It took 3 years. The last year, you're going to be on the issue. It's going to show the progress every single month for a year." And so, that was a great project. And then we traveled all over because we went shopping. Now it's his project, his pet project for the magazine, right? So now we're going to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Cody, Wyoming, because the theme was mixing styles. I had to mix arts and craft, Art Deco, Art Nouveau, high mountain living, Southwest, all together. They actually do coexist together very well, easily. So we went to Jackson, Wyoming, Cody, Wyoming, went to Buffalo Bill's ranch, met all these artisans, came back with the burlwood furniture, the Stickley furniture, all that. And then we went to Monrovia, Pasadena's arts and craft capital of the world, created a greenhouse. So we went and bought the Matawi tiles, had everything custom, everything in the house I designed, like the hoods, the copper hoods. My dad was a craft professional. He made all of his own ductwork, his HVAC contractor. And so he made copper hoods. So I had a really good background knowledge of that. He taught me how to use the brake when I was 8, But no, it was a great project. It was so hands-on, and I got to meet so many good people and artisans. Lake Placid, you've got Adirondack furniture going in there. In Italy, amazing. We went to Italy. Yeah. Italy, though, I got to tell you, so I'll end on this one. Obviously, I love this project. But going to Italy, we went there only because we wanted to find in their antique stores and art galleries the original artwork for the Plains Indians, because the Medici family used to send their artists with their sketchbooks over to America to sketch the Plains Indians. And then they had all these sketchbooks, and they'd bring them back to Italy. Well, they're if you go to Florence, they're abundant. That's where the Medici family was kind of hubbed, Rome. But that's why we went there, and we just picked up all kinds of other things too. But what a beautiful place. That was my first time there. So anyways, the Idea House was, I was very afraid to take that project, even though I knew Bill really well, because it was you're in the limelight so much. And it's nerve-wracking. And then he's like, everyone's going to be looking, and you're the only designer on here, and there's no pressure. There's no pressure. So yeah, of course I said yes. And I'm so glad I did. Yes, I grew a lot.
Yeah, it seems like a tremendous experience. And I will agree, like being from the Midwest, there's something to be said about two things. I mean, you mentioned your survival instinct, but also, that hard work ethic, but just that kindness, community, how you can build relationships. I think, a lot of Midwesterners are unique for that. But with this client, I mean, you get this huge opportunity. You're traveling. You mentioned, you're going to Italy, you're going to Wyoming and all these different locations. At this point in your career, from a business standpoint, although these are incredible resume builders and opportunities, but what about structurally from a financial standpoint? Did you fully grasp, maybe the value of your time and travel and, the time you're putting into this project? How did that look back then to now, just from, because I feel like a lot of us, it takes time to kind of work through that pricing model, especially if you're traveling,
Of course, that also comes with experience, Brad. You need to know what you might encounter when you're traveling. And of course, there's always the unexpected expenses. So you have an unexpected expense account. You know what I mean? Like you have to pad it a little bit, because if you don't, then, it could cause an issue for you that way. And then, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do a job, some of the projects after working on that project very well. I didn't do that. So when I worked on that project, it was such a editorial moment, so you're kind of giving some of your time to get the experience, to get the exposure, so of course you charge for your time and it'll be so, but that particular project was what other benefit am I getting from this? And it was huge. So I really don't say I became a millionaire on that one, but not even close, actually. But I also had a place in Payson that I used as a model home for plaster finishes and things like that, which helped me get that job, because the whole house was D-system plaster, not Venetian, but just everything in there was something that I had at my cabin as well. So it helped visualize for that. So as far as now, your question is, how do you manage time? And, it is trial and error in some of it, but also having the right people work for you that can guide you that way. Yeah.
Well, it takes time too. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Denise.
No, I'm saying you seem to have that under wraps. I mean, I marvel at your organization and the camaraderie you have with all the professionals that are so very talented in your company. I mean, I even message you sometimes. You're so inspiring me today, Brad. Just because your podcast, you're so consistent. And maybe you'll ask me that question about how's your AI going or whatever, but I don't know that you use a lot of AI. I mean, you seem very organic also with your social media, which is great.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that. I think, I think there's a fine line. I think there is some value to the authenticity side. I will tell you that we try really hard, and I feel in general, every project we do is much better than years ago. But in occasion, we run into problems like everyone does, and there's things that maybe we have a SOP for a reason, we don't follow it, and it backfires. Like you said, it's experience, and you just realize after that's happened, hey, we got to go back to square one. And there's a reason why we have the system we do, the operation, the timeline, the expectations, because it sets us up for success. The AI thing is interesting. There are a lot of aspects we're using AI, but I do find, and I'll give one example. I was emailing a client and last night, and it would have been really easy for me to take their email, put it in ChatGPT or something, right, and formulate a response. But the context of the email as we're working through a few issues, it's just one of those, you're just like, I'm going to write this myself. And instead of it taking 2 minutes on ChatGPT, and just to be open, I don't think I've ever sent an email. Actually, I know I have never sent an email via ChatGPT. Like, I really work hard to be authentic, even if it takes more time. And so that took me, honestly, 20, 30 minutes to write that email, but it was definitely more from the heart, where if the client's reading it, they could see, I'm not here to point fingers, but like, here's some context, and, let's work to this solution. And so I think AI is very valuable to expedite a lot of job tasks, like contracts and red lines, and takeoffs, and we're using it in a lot of different aspects of the company. But I think there's just certain roles or responsibilities we have that the human element still plays the most important role.
Absolutely. And I try to go to some of my vendors, get to know luncheons, or, they'll have like a buffet set up, some of my flooring companies. And I talk to the people there. There's usually a lot of realtors I don't know. I'm just meeting them. And I'll ask them that question. I'll say, so for networking, what is your number one go-to? And the one particular gentleman said to me, show your face. Go go call your real estate offices or whatever as a designer and ask if you can give a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
That's very organic. But again, trust. I mean, even when I'm online on Instagram, I don't know if that's AI sometimes. You know what I mean? Not you, but like I'm always listening to this, Buddhist from Tibet or this monk or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and it's AI because their voice is different than the way they look, what you would expect in Tibet, but their message is good. So, but I don't always know if it's AI or not. And oddly, I will receive emails that I'm learning now are AI from people that pretend to be a client or a wannabe client of yours, and that they have a project. And I don't know how they're benefiting from wasting my time because they don't really have a project. But it's so realistic now because they could be, from another country and don't speak English, but their AI is helping them to write very proficiently, something that I would expect to be from a high-end client. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but I don't know who to ignore anymore, and I don't ignore people because I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But, yeah.
Well, you mentioned that. I guarantee you're not ignoring people because I know you've been very communicative with me, but also, like you said early on, it's FaceTime, right? I mean, that you just have to show up. You made a comment that was interesting. As you're attending with your trade partners and vendors, and they're having these networking events, which are great for your business, you mentioned that you could ask for a presentation, and I was. I thought that's interesting because a lot of people are looking at how they expand their brand or become a thought leader, and it never dawned on me that, that's as simple as what you're saying, Denise. Go into some of your trusted partners who are having a panel or a networking event and, ask to speak to kind of get your name out there.
Yeah. And they always like free food too.
Who doesn't, right?
Have food will travel, But yeah, those are organic ways. I mean, you don't have to inundate yourself with them, but maybe choose once a month or every other week or something, whatever you want to do, whatever you have time for. But I'm an advocate for going into an office and saying, "Hey, how you doing?" If you're in the area. I don't go out and look for it and make my schedule that way, but I'll go by an office. I know someone who works there, or maybe I don't. Maybe I see them on social media. If I didn't know you, I would say, "Oh, that's AFT office. I'm going to go see if Brad's around, see if I can bother you." But I mean, if it works out, a face is everything. A handshake is everything. Looking into someone's eyes is everything to me. Yeah. So that's where you trust. You can see genuine in someone's face.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Going back to the commercial residential, do you feel that there's a difference in quality, what they're asking for in either space? How does budget play a role if you're designing even a really nice med spa as opposed to someone's custom home?
Good question. I guess there's all degrees of quality in every category. You can kind of tell if they say, "Hey, I'm going to build 5 of these. I just want one layout," then they'll probably spend money on the layout, but then they'll find different ways to resource the others. Maybe find a tile, make the first one maybe a little more expensive. It just depends how many they're building. And how does it differ? Well, let me know if I'm answering this question correctly. I would have to say it's a little colder in commercial.
Right.
It depends on what the company is. They're there to build an office that's going to generate revenue. Right? They don't want to spend all their money, on how beautiful it's going to look. Maybe 1 or 2 areas that are focal when you walk in, of course, the reception area, but they're there to make money. They're not here to spend it all before they open their doors. And then as businesses grow, well, they add more. Just like even homeowners, I get mad at you builders because you take all the money before I come along sometimes. I'm just joking, but homeowners, it's a little more personal, and unless they're wanting to, live in a home for 2 years and avoid capital gains and sell it, then they may not put all that money into it. But if it's their last home, like the one I just finished, they said, this is it. I'm going to do what I want. I don't really care what the market is right now. I'm going to die here, as they say. And then my children can figure it out later is usually what I hear. But that's a larger ticket item because they really it's their last hurrah in their home. And I'll hold your hand through that any day of the week. Let's do it for you. But yeah, I would say warm on the homeowner, on the residential, and cooler on the commercial. So that's pretty much it, especially if you're building more than one. What are we making money on? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because my experience were in commercial as well. It's of course they still want quality. To your point, they want a nice design. They want to attract the ideal customer. I mean, we talked about that, but at the end of the day, they need to open. It needs to be operating. The more days it's not open, they're not bringing revenue, and so there's just different terms from because of those stipulations. A lot of times there's liquidated damages. For the contractor to be late. I know you gave the example of residential that we're always over budget, so there's no room for furniture, which impacts you. But, on the commercial side, where you have strict timelines and you have operating costs and they need to be open and functioning, how does that change your pre-com process? When you're designing for commercial or residential, do you feel that, your deadlines are tighter, that you're more on top of it? Everything has to be selected as opposed to residential that, some things can be more nuanced, what would do a custom design?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you have to be more regimented with commercial, especially if they have a grand opening date, of which if they were very smart about it, they'd give everybody a date that was about 6 months before the actual one, because commercial can, depending on if your materials are coming in on time or, like any job, like any project, the scheduling of deliveries. And, sometimes there are situations where we just don't have any control over that. But yeah, I would say, boom, 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 commercial. You better have everything organized as much as you can, and talk about communication. And if that's not a tight network with the communicating, where everyone's on the same page, everyone's CC'd, everyone's on every email. You just have to be. Yeah. And then follow through. That's something you do everywhere and on everything, but I would say it's much more punchy with the commercial, that you have to be highly sensitive. Although, you work on some of these residential and you're working for CEOs of companies that are very demanding. I would say sometimes that's even more demanding than some of the commercial projects I've been on. So, which I like. I love it. I love when a client likes to be part of the building team. It can, you have to really, I wouldn't say control it, but monitor it in a way that is conducive for everybody, though, because sometimes that can stir up the flow of the actual building team. Like interrupting, it might slow it down unless they have valid changes they want to make, whatever it is, if that is clear enough the way I said that. But it can get hairy also. But it's really nice when they're so passionate about their project that they just want to be there every step of the way. Yeah. It's fun. Definitely.
Yeah, it is fun. It is interesting. I'm still, visiting the project every day. For sure, residential, that's very common because they're excited to see their house and things come together. But I have seen commercial owners there too, especially if it's, to your point, a serviceable industry, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's, we've done like pets, daycare and hair salons. And what's funny is they're very involved. Even if the design's done, they still want to, be involved. And a lot of them, sometimes will bring in, potential employees to be interviewed, or the public, preparing for the grand opening. But, the reality is at either end, whether budget's a role, whether quality's a role, goes back to your point that you have to have good relationships with your clients. How have you been able to do that, Denise, for you? You mentioned that, you're working with a lot of repeat clients, and there's a client you and I worked with, 13 years ago. You're there now doing stuff. How have you been able to build a rapport with them and find some commonality?
it's just trust, Brad. It's just like when you pick out you're friends with your clients, but you also have to remember that you are a professional. And sometimes when you're too comfortable, you lose that edge. You have to always stay where you started. Who was I when I met this client? Well, I'm still that person. I just know them better now. Yeah. So never let your hair down too much, but they see that you are, keeping it up in a bun a little bit, because they don't want you to lose your professional edge. No way. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do them justice, right? So doing your job, it's a proven track record. That's why we're referred, is because they don't want to have to start all over with someone new. Oh my gosh, that's a painful experience having to keep starting over with someone new, So loyalty. Are you loyal? Yeah, I'm loyal. Yeah.
What are some of the pain points you've had with builders over the years?
I'm sorry, will you say that again?
What are some of the pain points or frustrations or mishaps you've had with builders over the years? Again, not naming any, but just examples for us to learn from.
I think because I'm very vetted in my career and I have a lot of experience, I really try to stay humble and not bossy, because it is the builder that's building it. But I had a situation that your architect sets out the prints. It comes back from the city. Sometimes you get those prints back and they might just have a generic lighting plan in there, and then we take it and fine tune it more customly because it's a time crunch, or we want to get it back so we can start working. The outer shell is probably there. But if I put in floor outlets, okay, if I designate where these floor outlets are going to be, they're CAD, I have it all perfectly laid out. The architects approved it. But if they don't have the right set of plans, Brad, and they're going to pour a foundation tomorrow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I struggle with communication. It's almost like sometimes as a designer, we feel like I think they think, some of them, especially some of the new ones, they might think that we're a little pushy. They don't want to lose their control, or they don't want to, I don't know the word. No one's belittling you. No one's trying to control your project. My job is to make sure you have the right set of plans. And if you're going to pour something that's been changed since the original set of plans that came back from the city 6 months ago, well, we need to communicate, because I had that situation. I happened to call them. They were pouring the next day. And I was so shocked. Do you have the 7 floor outlets? Wouldn't you agree? You'd want to know where the floor outlets go before you pour the slab, right? It'd be ideal
before I have to saw cut and jackhammer. So
yeah. So I think it's a communication. That was a long way of answering your question, but it explains it. Designers are not here to boss anyone around, but it's their designs, and you can't do your job if you're not given the right information or have it in front of you. So communication all the way, because a lot of builders have their own internal design team, so they already have their team. Some builders do not. And it's intimidating to have a new building team, because now you have to get to know them as well. Right. And be respectful and patient. And that goes from me too, respect everyone's scope. What is their scope and how do you fit in? Yeah. And every style is different too. Yeah.
The new building team's interesting. It's no different, for us, work with the new designer. It's like, to your point, communication is such a big role, but how are we going to work through challenges that come up? How do we make sure that the other one doesn't feel like I'm, driving the bus over them, right? And do things behind the back that would put them in a tough position. When you're working with a new team, which can be intimidating, and it's really important to start off on the right foot, what are some strategies to make sure you're aligned, as you can be working together for such a long time?
I ask questions right away, and I'll bring up, I don't think I'm annoying to any builders, but I think there is that stigma with designer builders just because maybe they had a bad experience with someone who kept changing walls and things like that. But strategy is asking questions that are sincere. I really want this to go smoothly, Brad. Let's say you're new to me. What are your expectations of me, and how can I help you through this project? Do you like this? Do you like that? Do you want me to communicate this way? Do you work all hours of the night like me? Do you get up at 4:00 in the morning? I would be interviewing them to show them that I really want this to be smoothly. I run smoothly. I don't want to step on toes. It's not what I do. Mm-hmm. Let me know how I can help you. In a way, a designer is a builder's assistant, because the architect brings out the first set of plans that the designer hopefully had worked with before it went to the city, because that'll just alleviate many, many changes, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll ask those questions, but the orchestration of that whole thing is for everyone to feel open enough, to feel strong enough to ask questions, and to be sensitive. What and how can I help you with communication? Because I want to work on a platform that works for you and that you're used to working with, because I can do it. I can switch, I can mutate, I can adjust. So some people don't want to. I mean, I had a builder the other day that says, nope, this is the way it is. We use my vendors, which is fine, because mm-hmm. the builder wants to use their vendors. I will handle everything. You give it to me, give your designs, and then that's it. And mm-hmm. others are more open. They're like, well, let's all meet together at the showroom. Wouldn't that be great? Mm-hmm. So everyone's different. It's just finding the right plan for everyone. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And this is one that, again, setting those expectations. How do you work with the builder that's like, hey, these are my vendors, and maybe they're different vendors than you've used. For you, it can be challenging in a way. How do you kind of find common ground to maybe, I don't want to say push some years, but at least educate the builder? Hey, we may have some mm-hmm. other resources. Maybe there's some cost savings. As you're kind of building that relationship.
Well, it's experience with the approach, Brad, because you don't want to offend this one particular builder did not want to tell me who her vendors were. And I have my own, and I'm very loyal. She's very loyal to hers, and I respect that. But I have a job to do, so if I'm supposed to go pick out slabs, I don't know who the fabricator is. Okay. I don't mm-hmm. need to know who the fabricator is. But I don't really need to know your vendors as long as I can communicate with them. I'm not going to go take them away, because, it's hard. Once we find vendors, we don't want to give them up. And we're loyal because they're so good to us, mm-hmm. also. So I respect that loyalty. I guess you just have to go with the flow. You just have to say, well, Miss Builder, how can I help? How can I do my job better in your system? I just need to get my job done. So not to step on toes, but please give me the schedule of how you want me to proceed, and I'll see if it works with me, and then maybe we can come to a compromise. That mm-hmm. kind of thing. So, yeah. Compromise is big in this business. You have to compromise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super important. It's hard, right? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we're hard-headed, at least I am at times, where it's like, I believe this process to be true, and it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to work with, these different personalities, and it's really tough to be headstrong, or to not be mm-hmm. headstrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we all know what we're capable of doing, what works for us, why break it if it's not broken, kind of thing. But we also learn from other people and how they run their company, and mm-hmm. that what's where I'm open to that. I'm open to listen. So what works for you? And maybe I'll do that too, or maybe they'll do something that I'm doing, mm-hmm. So not being too stubborn, because sometimes it could help you grow also.
Yeah. It's amazing. What keeps you up at night?
Oh, I sleep great.
That's my favorite.
I sleep wonderful. I mean, I stretch. I do a little Tai Chi now. I'm into breathing. Okay. Military box breathing. I do that before. And that's the only thing I can do that I don't think about anything else. Sometimes when you're stretching or having a hard time meditating, whatever it is, because I'm thinking, oh, I'm so glad arches are back now. Like I'm thinking about work. I wake up in the foyer on a set of plans, but I sleep great. I think it's just taking care of yourself. I don't have a problem with that. I don't. But I also wake up at 4 a.m, so I'm pretty regimented on. Yeah, I have dogs, so like I don't really have a choice. Who needs an alarm clock? But yeah, no, like unless some special event's going on, I'm usually a 10 to 4 girl.
Okay.
So see you in the morning.
Yeah.
Just let me know how early I can text you or email you. But yeah. So no, I don't have any problem with that. I think it's when you're finally feeling at ease and balance in your life that taking care of yourself, you can sleep better. You don't. How about that? I see you working that all the time. I'm like, oh, you're doing walking lunges with how much weight, and I'm doing standing lunges, and I can barely sit on the sofa. But at least I'm trying, right? I'm getting over the fear and moving in. My arthritis is thanking me now for doing that because that slowed me down for a long time too. But not anymore. Yep.
Life's tricky, as you look back in your career. It's amazing. I mean, a lot of the conversation you've related the experience, Denise, and you've had so much life experience. You've had so much business experience, so it's put you in a position to very communicate well with your customers. And where I'm going is that, like, it seems now, at least, we've seen each other at a lot of events, and of course we speak offline and message, and you're a very positive person. So you can tell that, at least from my perspective looking in, that you're not dealing with a ton of stress because you just have a good understanding of life and business. And so you're probably working with a lot of the great clients that you've built these relationships with that have moved along. Was there a point in your career though where stress played a role? How did you manage that? How did you learn to overcome that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, between 2008 and then relationship changes and then COVID and life changes, a lot of loss, Brad. I had a lot of loss, losing parents and people that got sick during COVID and trying to stay healthy and positive throughout that. I mean, now, was I successful at it? No. I wish I could change a lot of the things, but you finally reach a point where you're like, can I change any of that? No. So why am I worrying about it? You just got to have faith. I'm a faithful person and I believe in God. I'm very put it in his hands. I got to go. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now. So it works. It works for me. Just let it go.
I actually love that. I think a lot of us, at least for me, early in my career, it's hard to do that. Maybe even a few years ago. And I think now, it's almost like these levels, like I feel like in some ways for me, today's a little bit more stressful than probably the past. Like sometimes, things just build up, but I will say I'm better at, managing it. Like you said, it's just, I think a lot of times we think something's going to be a lot worse than it actually is. And you stress about the outcome because you don't know what that is, and realizing that, yes, some of these challenges are big challenges. Some of them are big stresses, but at the end of the day, we can get through and move on, and, there's still tomorrow.
Yeah. Just being present. It's hard to be living in the present sometimes because you are concerned about what you're doing tomorrow. I mean, of course you have to be prepared for tomorrow. If you have a presentation, it's not like you don't do that, but sometimes we think too far. You can have your 5-year plan, but you don't have to look at it every day, so yeah. But I guess, it's just, you gotta smell some roses. I didn't take a vacation for like 3 years.
It's amazing.
About 3 years ago. I didn't even think about it. I was so busy. Oh my gosh, what a disaster.
Right.
I think that's when I learned how to breathe when I finally went on vacation. But no, you have to. Like, I see all these professionals, they work hard, some realtors. I love it when they post. One's in Susan Candelaria's in Europe right now. You know what I mean? And I feel like I'm there because they're so good with their social media. But no, you need to do that. You need to just take off. Plane fares aren't as expensive as they used to be.
Right.
So just go. Just do it. Some of these places, the destinations you get there and it's actually very inexpensive once you're there.
Right.
So
it's not as bad as you think.
No, just enjoy it for sure.
Well, you've been incredible. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry. No, I had a mother. My mother was a war bride during World War II. She met my dad over in England. So, I had family over there. So I had the experience, even coming from northern Minnesota, to go over to Europe or England mostly. And I think that's where I fell in love with architecture and ancient walls and Flintstone walls and 400-year-old homes. It was just, I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But traveling is really inspiring for your career too. Absolutely.
I love that. I love going to Europe. I don't know what it is. Europe is so, especially being in construction, you're in design. It's so inspirational. It's just amazing. I'd imagine, from a designer perspective, travel gives you so much inspiration for your projects. And, Denise, it shows though, because I've worked with you. I've seen your talent. It's really incredible. You've done some amazing projects. I mean, it's always hard to convey to a listener, some of the incredible things you've done in your career, which are pretty admirable. But I know how busy you are. I really appreciate making time for the audience and coming on today, Denise. You're incredible. For those listening, where can they find you? How can they reach out, how are you for interior design?
Website, DS-W Interior Design. You'll have all my information on that. Instagram, same. Facebook. And just come and find me. I'm here, and I'm not a shoe store. DSW Interior Design,
Amazing.
I'm not designer shoe wear. I do like Prada. I don't think you get them there though. But anyways, I do, by appointment only for sure. So 602-320-4347. I love my text messages. So reach out.
It's amazing. Well, Denise, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thanks so much, Brad. I appreciate it.